Welcome to the HRchat podcast, bringing the best of the HR, talent, and leadership communities to you. For more episodes and the latest articles covering what's new in the world of work, visit hrgazette.com, subscribe and follow us on social media.
Welcome to another episode of the HR Chat Show. I'm your host today, Bill Banham, and in this episode we're going to be focusing on what's hot and what's going on in the world of recruitment and recruitment events in the UK. My guest this time is Louise Triance, MD at UK Recruiter, a leading dedicated news and networking platform for the UK recruitment sector. Louise is a recruitment industry connector, live webcast expert, and event organizer and advisor. Louise helps vendors under the landscape create go-to-market propositions. She's also a trained psychometric assessor. Louise, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So beyond my wee introduction there, Louise, why don't you start by taking a minute or two and introducing yourself to our listeners?
I think you've probably done a fabulous job of introducing me there already. But yeah, I run a community site and network for recruitment for people in the UK. It's TA folk, agency folk, vendors who are engaging in that space. And I do a lot of different things in that space. So organise events. I know we're going to talk about events today. I also do regular newsletters, regular content, and things like that. And one of the things I regularly do is webinars and podcasts. And it's really nice to be on the other side of the mic.
Oh boy, did you hear that, listeners? I always get nervous when I'm interviewing another host, because they know all the best practices and they can see what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. So hopefully, listeners, Louise goes easy on me today. Okay, listen, what I want to start by is talking with you about something that I'm quite passionate about. So regular listeners of this show will know that I've been producing events for a number of years for HR pros, for talent professionals, for leaders and others in that space. And yeah, it's been a roller coaster the last couple of years, to say the least. You have an amazing track record, Louise. You're absolutely prolific with the content that you create and the events that you produce. Are we really now in a situation where in-person events are back?
Yes, I think so. I kind of wish I could say that a little bit more confidently, but it is a yes. At the start of this year, it was an agency focused event in the UK, the Recruitment Agency Expo, and it was packed. So that was a really good feeling. It was full of people wanting to look at tech and product providers, but actually they were really keen to see the talks, the presentations. So you might think 2 years of lockdown, watching a ton of live content on the computers, on LinkedIn, those type of things, webinars, podcasts, you might think people have had enough. But no, I think they want to get back in the room with each other to network, because that's the bit with online events you just can't replicate, but also to pick up really good content. So actually, all in all, I felt really great about that. I think there's still some challenges. I think that people are really stretched for time. So if you can't make an assumption that just because you're putting on an event in person, you're going to get an audience there. I think there is still a challenge in making it an event that people are going to give up their half day, evening, full day to attend.
We'll be right back to this conversation after this very brief message from today's sponsoring partner. CoachHub is the leading global talent development platform that enables organizations to create a personalized, measurable and scalable coaching program for their entire workforce, regardless of department and seniority level. By doing so, organizations are able to reap a multitude of benefits, including increased employee engagement, higher levels of productivity, improved job performance, and increased retention. Learn more at coachhub.com. Okay, thank you. I'd be interested to hear from you, Louise, how hybrid work hours have affected the event space then. Is it now more difficult to attract the number of bums on seats, as it were, that you need for an event, just simply because folk are not necessarily in the office 5 days a week anymore? Or actually, maybe the answer is yes, Bill, perhaps it is, but not within my space, because recruiters are still client facing. They still need to be actively out and about all the time.
I don't know. I mean, I think you make a really good point there. I think that hybrid work hours will affect the event space. I think that there's probably some data to back up that my feeling, which is people who go into the office probably don't do it on a Monday or Friday. They're probably there being at home days. So I think that if you were thinking of trying to attract business people to a business event on a Monday or Friday, you'd probably struggle even more now than previously. So I think that if people who do some work at home, some work in an office, they're probably making a decision as to whether they go to that physical event during their home day, unlikely, or during their office day, or do they have to be in the office on that Tuesday, and therefore they need to go to that in-person event on a day when they'd normally be at home. And I think we're still navigating that. Having said that, I think if you have an amazing event, people will come to it regardless of what day it is.
What about making the events themselves hybrid? So not just offering a way to access online, which is great, but also perhaps bringing in speakers in an online capacity, so you can have folk, joining in from all over the world live and presenting. Is that seen as a more attractive option today in a post-pandemic workplace?
It is, but whether people are successfully navigating that, I don't know. Towards the latter half of last year, I attended a hybrid event for event organisers. So they had a conference in London, and some of it was in New York, I think. And then they had the online segment. And frankly, they didn't get it right. And this was an events platform for events organisers. So until the experts are totally able to get it right, I don't think there's a model which is going to work for everybody. Having said that, I still think it's worth a try. If you're doing like an evening event with speakers, the idea that maybe you could stream that content out over Facebook Live or YouTube Live as well, I think that's quite appealing, and I think you will pick up other people. But for me, how the challenge is, how do you have the networking, the chat work across people who are in the physical space and sitting at home? And that, again, I'm going back to it, but that's value, is when you can get people to be properly communicating at an event.
Okay, awesome. Now then, because you are so prolific, one of the things that you do is you regularly host live chat events on Recruiter Zone, including one in April 2022 focused on the most common challenges faced by high growth startup rec businesses. Can you maybe share now some of what you guys discussed in that session and list some of those biggest challenges?
Yeah, I've done a few for recruitment startups, because actually right now there's a lot of businesses starting up in many sectors. Recruitment agencies, there's always a really high number of recruitment agency startups. The barrier is pretty low, and you work for another recruitment agency, or you've been in-house in a TA role, and you think, I know loads of people I can recruit. I can set my own agency up. I think that particular one was probably focused on some of the kind of issues around finances. Had a really interesting chat, because this was with a company called Simplicity, who do funding for startups. They were talking about how if you do contractors or temps, you have to be absolutely certain you can meet that payroll. If you're thinking of expanding your business, you can't take on consultants unless you're absolutely certain that you can pay them their commissions. But also, you can start up a recruitment business with £500 from your back bedroom. Sorry, $500 from your back bedroom. You don't need to take out a loan for 30,000 or whatever, but cash is actually a big issue in recruitment businesses, and one of the problems I think lots of recruitment businesses encounter is around cash flow. And the second, which is totally relevant to TA folk who are thinking of working with new startup recruiters, is compliance. Making certain that the businesses you're working with really understand all of that before they start getting people on your site, or before they start even taking that job spec from you. Another thing is around spending your money wisely, and that's relevant to all sorts of businesses, whether they're recruitment agencies or any other startup. So yeah, it was an interesting chat.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay. And you also recently interviewed Alison Humphreys for a Recruiter Zone show about the 7 habits of highly effective recruitment leaders. I'd love for you now to share some of those habits and why they matter.
So I should have done my pre-event research better and got up the replay and have a listen to it, because actually I'm going to be honest, I can't remember all of those habits. What she did on that particular show was she talked about some of the mistakes that recruiters have made and people that she works with. She's a non-exec director working with growth businesses. Probably the best thing I can do is actually share that with people afterwards, because what she did, as well as run that show with me, is she wrote an article for our site with an infographic. So some of those were things around learning to be a business person, not just a recruiter. That's one of the things which goes back to the chat show I did earlier, which is about, understanding business. One of the ones I think you'll love was about contributing as part of the community. So, don't be an island. Think about running events. Think about running, sessions for people, webinars, podcasts. And another one, which is just kind of so obvious, but people get it wrong, is not thinking about why you're doing this. So, and that's relevant to anybody starting out in business, is maybe your only reason is, I hate working for my boss, but that probably isn't enough for starting up a recruitment business or any other type of business. If I was a TA person thinking of engaging a recruiter, I'd hate to think that that was their why.
Now then, on the Straight to the Point show, you spoke with Erica Clifford from Just Recruit, Louise, and she shared 4 things that she wishes someone had told her before she started her own recruitment agency. I'm not going to ask you to remember all 4 of those this time, but instead I'd love to get your take. What are some things that you wish that people had told you before starting your business?
Sorry, I was on mute then. Shall I just pause for 3 seconds and start again?
Please.
I'm kind of glad that I didn't listen to advice when I started my business, because I was in a different space. I was doing something where there wasn't really a model already in place, which is just such an incredibly lucky position to be in. So 20 something years ago, when I started UK Recruiter, there weren't communities of recruitment people. There were publications like the Executive Grapevine, and there were printed magazines, but there weren't other online communities. So I felt my own way. I think now people starting out, they're kind of, yes, take advice from other people, look at what others are doing in similar spaces. Don't replicate or copy what someone else is doing. And to me, that's actually it was super easy in the early days to have that as kind of like one of my guiding principles. But as the years went on, I still stood by it. So yeah, I listened to what other people say. I love to take advice from other people, but I've never had a model to copy. And as the years went by, when I guess that was a potential opportunity for me, I've still avoided that. So I'm not saying I'm cutting edge, but I have gone my own route rather than replicated what others have done. And it's stood me in good stead. I was early for blogging, very early for live chats. I was doing networking events for recruiters when others weren't. And I've really enjoyed. It's hard to say you're on the edge of a curve, in the recruitment space, but I have really enjoyed the journey I've taken.
I wonder, are there any shout outs that you'd like to give? Any folk in the space who you think are also kind of at the cutting edge? People like, maybe, I don't know, Bill Borman, for example.
Oh, Bill. Yeah, Bill does spring to mind. It's so funny when you said that. I've loved working with Bill. Now, oh my word, 15 years ago, maybe more, when Bill was working as a recruitment trainer, he used to write articles for my newsletter. And now I feel like I've been around for forever. But people like him, and Matt Alder used to write website reviews for me. I was talking to Emma Mirrington, who was at Sky at the time and now runs the most amazing group called the Forum for In-House Recruiters. She used to write website reviews for me. So I feel incredibly lucky to have intersected with lots of these people at an earlier point in their careers, and then to see where they've gone with things like True London for Bill. What a fabulous set of events that he created. Again, not copying what someone else did, using his imagination, thinking outside the box.
Listeners, there is an episode with Bill somewhere on this feed. I think maybe you need to go back to, maybe middle of 2020, something like that, to find that. Please take a listen. Bill's an awesome guy. Okay, going back to asking tips from you for our listeners for today. You recently wrote an article called "How to Transform Your Website into a Recruitment Tool." Louise, can you share some of your tips from that?
Yeah, so this is almost obvious, but it's strange how many businesses don't think about this, and that's to have a dedicated career space. So, the HR, the TA people who are listening to your show are going to say, well, that, yeah, sure. But sometimes they're buried so deep inside a site and they're not a careers page, they're just a list of jobs. So, one of the things I'm involved in is the National Online Recruitment Awards. Stephen O'Donnell has been the host, the organizer of those for 20 plus years. And they are awards which look at websites, recruitment websites, either job boards or corporate websites. And so each year I'm reviewing hundreds of careers pages. And so often I think, gosh, why would anyone want to work for that organization? There's no compelling messaging. There's no information about people who also work at the organization. There's nothing really to attract people. So I'm having this careers page, which is front of house, really important. I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but optimizing for mobile, it's pretty shocking, but still lots of careers pages are not optimized for mobile. And we know that job seekers, even if they're not doing a commute to work on the train anymore, they're sitting on the sofa at home looking for jobs on their phones. And I alluded to it a bit earlier, but things like, in your careers pages, make certain that your company culture is foremost. You want to attract a certain type of person, not people just like you. We're not talking about that. We're talking about letting people see that personality shine. Another thing which actually wasn't on that list is about the way in which you treat your applicants. So making certain that as part of your process, it's responding to every single person who applies for a job in an appropriate way. Yes, you can use automation, but personalized automation.
It's pretty scary to think that in 2022, there are still businesses out there who don't have mobile optimized websites, Louise.
Oh, I know. Do you know, and that's why I'm hesitant to say it, because there'd be loads of people who are like, well, duh. But there are. And for 30 years, I've been talking about people treating their applicants as they would wish to be treated themselves. And I'm still having to say the same thing. So, it's disappointing. I'm sure loads and loads of businesses get it really, really right. But yeah, just bear it in mind.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, so as we've mentioned so far, you are prolific and you create so much. And one event that's coming up, one in-person event that's coming up on the 23rd of June 2022 is the Recruitment Technology Innovation and Social Media Showcase. It will have 20 of the top tech providers within the recruitment industry in the UK, live and in person. Can you maybe tell our listeners a bit about that event and any other events that you've got coming up over the next few months?
I shall. So that's an event I've actually been running for 10 years now. I really like it because it's like you come along to look at a bit of tech that you've spotted. So maybe you're thinking, oh, I need a new CRM. And then you get in the room and you see all these other really cool providers of tech. And you think, do you know what? Let me just have a little look at those. So it's an opportunity to have conversations with people from these different businesses. We do two things which are pretty unique. I've seen a couple of other people try to replicate it, hasn't worked for them. One of them is the 2-minute elevator pitch. So the session starts with everybody coming on stage, doing 2 minutes, going off stage. It's a bit of fun. So they're pitching what their product is so the audience can decide whether they want to check it out. And then the other thing we do is we do these speed demos. Literally, you walk up to a table, you sit down, you have a 20-minute demo. I ring a bell, a proper bell, and everyone moves around. It's a bit like speed dating, but why it works is because you're not obliged to stay longer. you know you only have to stay for 20 minutes, have that demo, and then pop off and talk to somebody else. So that's in London, 23rd of June. And the only other in-person event I'm running myself is an event for job boards towards the end of the year in London. But I'm also involved in the Recruitment Agency Expo in October in Birmingham. So I'll be going to that as well.
Excellent. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Unfortunately, however, we do need to wrap it up pretty soon. Before we do finish off, Louise, how can our listeners learn more? How can they connect with you?
So I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I am actually the only Louise Triance on LinkedIn, or you can find me at ukrecruiter.co.uk. I am also on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. Honestly, I'm everywhere. And I'm actually really happy to have a chat with anybody. So if you're trying to work out how best to work in the recruitment space, if you're looking at technology, if you want to talk about events, I'm more than happy to have a chat with anybody.
Wonderful. Well, that just leaves me to say for today, Louise, thank you very much for being my guest on this episode of the HRchat podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Bill.
And listeners, as always, until next time, happy working.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the HRchat podcast. There are hundreds of conversations with business experts available for free on the HR Gazette website, Apple, Spotify, and all the main platforms. And remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media.